Hey guys, welcome to Unacademy and Let's Crack NEET PG, the YouTube channel for Unacademy, our NEET PG division. So, where the goal is to get you the top educators, quality content, and to give you a great learning experience. My name is Chetanya Mittal. I am currently pursuing my MBBS from AIMS, New Delhi. So, I hope you've already downloaded the Unacademy Learning app, and if you haven't, just go to the Play Store and install. You will need an invite code to access all the free content, and that invite code that you can use to access free content is my name, that is Chetanya, Chetanya, and you can add 10 after that, right? I'll tell you why this 10 is there. It is because if you purchase a plan, then this code will also give you a discount. So this code is your solution to buying any subscription on Unacademy or unlocking the free plan. So as you know, we have the top educators teaching live with us on Unacademy, and educators, they are making plus courses for you guys on Unacademy. So what is a plus course? Plus course are basically these blocked courses which are available with a subscription. But then why am I asking you to download the Unacademy Learning app? Because just like on YouTube, we are making free content for you. Similarly, on the Unacademy platform itself, we are providing free of cost content, and these special classes are absolutely free of cost. So take maximum advantage of these special classes. And as you can see here, that Unacademy has live batch courses, and not only are these live, you can also access the recorded content once the class is over. So some students told us that they wanted to ask their doubts. So we have introduced an ask a doubt feature. So your doubt clearing problems are also solved. And for testing, we have special tests, we have weekly tests, and regular we are conducting mock tests. Unacademy has a 34,000 plus question bank, and that question bank is being utilized to test your preparation, right? So Unacademy is now a one-stop solution for all your NEET PG preparation needs. So you can see what are the upcoming batches or what are the latest batches. The new list will also be there on the application. So we've started batches on the 1st of March, and we have batches for FMGE, NEET PG, and INI CET. Besides that, you can take advantage of the free tests which are taken on the application. Okay. So I assure you, Unacademy will provide you flexibility in terms of not only your schedule, only in terms of your language, but also how many times you can practice, right? Besides that, with online education, it has become slightly difficult to interact with educators. But Unacademy, we have a very robust platform for chatting. So you can chat with the educators. It will feel like you're right in the classroom. And there is an option for interactive polls, just like a teacher asks questions in the class. So that can be done in our online classes as well. So you can take all the benefits of Unacademy if you take an Unacademy Plus subscription, where you are given all the live experience, the live classes, the live tests, the doubt clearing, the batch courses, the testing, the structured schedule, right? And there is another subscription called as the Iconic subscription, where you not only get the benefits of Unacademy but also Prep Ladder, because we have recently acquired Prep Ladder. Prep Ladder has some of the top faculty teaching for various subjects, and you have video lectures, you have question banks, you have revision courses, and you have the handwritten notes. And these notes will be especially useful for revision. If you buy them separately, they will cost you 7,000 rupees. Here they're all included in the plan. The 1 year plan will cost you 49,500, and there's an option to get a 2 year plan, and that will cost you 69,300. All you have to do is use a referral code, that is Chetanya10. It's a discount code that will give you an additional 10% discount, right? So please use this code while buying a Iconic or a Plus subscription. The Plus subscription will cost you 25,000 and 36,000 respectively, right? So this is how you can apply the referral code. You just go to on the Android phone, you go to the purchase option, and this is where you have the option to apply a referral code, and this is where you can also apply credits, right? So that is about the pricing of the Unacademy subscription. Now let's move on to today's topic, right? So I hope you've understood everything about the subscription, and if there are any details, you can always inquire, right? Right. So now let's talk about the types of nerve fibers today, right? So before I begin about the type of nerve fibers, I want to tell you about there are different kinds of classifications, right? So this is a physiology tidbit first of all. So we're taking short, very high yield topics. So let me tell you this topic, type of nerve fibers. This is ultra high yield. There always is a question related to this, right? And it's a very important topic from your nerve muscle physiology, right? So that's why we are doing this particular topic from nerve muscle physiology. And first, before I begin, I want to tell you there are two kinds of classifications of nerve fibers which were done by different scientists, and they're sort of overlapping also, but they're sort of exclusive also, right? So there's one classification that is known as the Erlanger and Gaster classification, right? and so I've written it as ENG. I'll show you the full name later. And there is another classification that is known as the Lloyd and Hunt classification, right? So if you want, I can write down the names, right? So, but what is important for you to know is that what is the difference between these two classifications, right? So for which classification what was done? So if I talk to you about that, right, sorry for the interruption. And right, so we're talking about the two kinds of classification, the Erlanger and Gaster and the Lloyd and Hunt classification. So if you look at the two classifications, it is important to know what is the difference between these two. And the main point of difference is that this classification, the Erlanger and the Gaster classification, it's for both motor and for sensory. It's for both motor and for sensory, whereas the Lloyd and Hunt classification, it is only for sensory fibers. It's only for sensory fibers. So we look into the differences in detail when we're talking about the two classifications. So first, let's move on to the Erlanger and Gaster classification, right? So this one is the Erlanger and Gaster classification, right? This is the first kind of classification. And in that, you have three kinds of fibers: the A fibers, the B fibers, and the C fibers, right? A, B, C. That's the classification here. So this one, you can also call it the alphabetical classification. You can also call it the alphabetical classification, whereas the Lloyd and Hunt classification, it's actually the numerical form of classification. So am I clear? If you look at the differences, the first kind of classification is for all kind of nerve fibers. It includes motor fibers and it's an alphabetical classification. Whereas the second kind of classification, it's purely for sensory fibers and it is a numerical classification, right? So that's the difference that is going to be there between these two kinds of classification. So we're doing the first kind of classification where you have A, B, and C types of fibers, right? So now the A type of fibers, they're further subdivided into four type of fibers: A alpha, A beta, A gamma, and A delta, right? A alpha, A beta, A gamma, A delta. Then you have B, C. That's the classification, right? So that is the Erlanger and Gaster classification, right? So now let's talk individually about each kind of fiber. Okay, so if we first consider this fact that the fibers here, first of all, you will have to look at the myelination status. First of all, you'll have to look at the myelination status, right? So what is the difference between A and C kind of fibers? The difference between the A and C kind of fibers is that the A kind of fibers, they are myelinated, whereas the C fibers, they are unmyelinated. They are unmyelinated, right? So conduction velocity, it depends on two factors, right? Conduction velocity. So if you look at that, the conduction velocity, it will depend on the kind of resistance that is offered, right? So resistance is equal to what is the formula for resistance? Rho L by A. Rho L by A. So if you take the length of the fibers to be constant, the resistance, it is inversely proportional to the diameter, and the resistance is directly proportional to the this resistance, right? So the conductivity, it will be the opposite way, right? So the more the fiber diameter, the conductance, right? So let's take the conductance as C. Let's write it as C. So the conductance will be directly proportional to the diameter, and it will also depend on the myelination. It will also depend on the myelination. So if it is more myelinated, the conduction will be faster, the conduction will be easier, right? So with that in mind, look here, the fiber diameter, it is going to decrease here. It is going to decrease. Let's have a look at first the A fibers, right? A alpha, A beta, A gamma, A delta. So if you look at the diameters, there is a decreasing trend. The diameter of the A alpha fibers is approximately 13 to 20. A beta is 5 to 12, A gamma is 3 to 6, and A delta is 2 to 5. So you keep reducing it and you will get the diameters here. These diameters are in micrometers, right? So what is the conduction velocity then? These A alpha fibers, since they are the largest, and all of these fibers, they are myelinated, right? So the A alpha fibers, they will have the highest conduction velocity up to 60 to 120 millimeter, 60 to 120 meters per second, 60 to 120 meters per second. And you can see in the proportion, the conduction velocities will also begin to decrease, right? Now, when you talk about the B kind of fibers, they are preganglionic autonomic fibers. They have a fiber diameter that is less than 3. and they have some conduction velocity which is also very low. It is even lower than the A type of fibers. It's even lower than the A delta type of fibers, right? Then if you talk about the C kind of fibers, these are unmyelinated fibers which have very, very small diameters. So their conduction velocities are very less. They're the least conduction velocities. They have the smallest diameters. They're unmyelinated. So they are very, very unfavorable for fast conduction. So they are required for slow conduction. They're required for slow conduction. So these are the C kind of fibers, and they're of two types: the fibers in the dorsal root ganglion, and the sympathetic fibers, right? So now let's talk about the A alpha type of fibers and A gamma type of fibers together. Okay. So if you look at muscle spindles, they have two kinds of fibers, the A alpha and the A gamma. Okay. The A alpha fibers, they are responsible for proprioception. They carry uh, impulses from the muscle spindle, and they give indication of proprioception, right? So they are proprioceptive fibers. Besides proprioception, all the motor fibers are alpha motor fibers, right? Which are going to your muscles. They are called as somatic motor fibers. So they are also A alpha. So these are the two kinds of uh, nerves that will be of A alpha type. Then let's talk about A gamma. So A gamma, they are extrafusal motor fibers. They are extrafusal, right? There are two kinds of things. So sorry, they're not extrafusal. They're basically the ones that are going to provide the motor supply to the muscle spindles. We'll talk about this in detail. All right. A gamma fibers, they are motor to the muscle spindles. So A alpha, they are motor to the muscles. They are motor to the muscles. That is, for example, to your biceps. But A gamma, they are also motor fibers, but these motor fibers are to the muscle spindles. Okay. Now A beta and A delta. The important thing is A delta fibers, they're responsible for pain, and your so you'll have to remember that A delta fibers are responsible for pain, and the A beta fibers are responsible for non-noxious stimuli such as touch and pressure, right? So minor stimuli like touch and pressure, they will be through A beta, and A delta carries pain and temperature. So if there's a very hot stimulus or a very painful stimulus, that will go via A delta, right? So now there is a differentiation between fast pain and slow pain that you do. Fast pain versus slow pain, right? So if you remember the fast pain, it is carried by A delta fibers. A delta fibers, they will carry fast pain. So who will carry slow pain? The C fibers. So the dorsal root fibers of C type, they are going to carry slow pain. So what is the finding from here? What is the important point to note from here? That you will find pain sensation being carried by A delta and C fibers. So pain and temperature, A delta, and also by C kind of fibers. The difference is they are myelinated, these are unmyelinated. So undoubtedly they will have faster conduction. So they are responsible for somatic pain. These are responsible for visceral pain. All right. B fibers are preganglionic autonomic, and C sympathetic fibers are postganglionic sympathetic. Okay. So that is a basic of the Erlanger and Gaster classification. Okay. So now let's move to the Lloyd and Hunt classification. Let's talk about the Lloyd and Hunt classification. So Lloyd and Hunt classification, if you look at, let's first look at it independently, and then we'll compare it with the Erlanger and Gaster classification. All right. So if you look here, this is a comparison with the Erlanger and Gaster classification, right? Let me just write in short. Okay. So now have a look. Now have a look here. The 1A type of fibers, they are basically present in the muscle spindle and annulospiral endings, and they are comparable to the A alpha, right? 1B fibers are also A alpha fibers, so they are going to go to the Golgi tendon organ. They're going to go to the Golgi tendon organ. So there are two kinds of fibers when you talk about A alpha fibers. A alpha fibers can be of two types. One are the ones that go to the muscle spindle. The second are the ones that go to the Golgi tendon organ. Later you will read that muscle spindle is responsible for the stretch reflex, and the Golgi tendon organ, it is responsible for the inverse stretch reflex. Alright, I'm not going into those details. The second kind of fibers are A beta. So these are they're labeled as 2. And I told you that they are responsible for touch and pressure sensations. So they have a muscle spindle. They can also go to the muscle spindle, but mainly they are responsible for touch and pressure sensations. And there is another kind where you can have the fibers as number 2. The classification is number 2, and that is the flower spray endings of muscle spindle. Okay, so if you guys are getting confused, let's do it this way. Let me present it to you in a different way. Okay. See here, there are three things regarding proprioception. There is a muscle spindle. You'll study this in detail when you do neurophysiology. So there is a muscle spindle and there is a Golgi tendon organ, GTO I'm writing it as. So fibers of Golgi tendon organ are of type 1B, right? So muscle spindle fibers, they have two kinds of nerve endings. There is an annulospiral ending, right? There is an annulospiral ending and there is a flower spray flower ending, right? Spray flower nerve endings. So these are of type 1b, these are the predominant ones. These are of type 1a and these are of type 2, right? So muscle spindle, it has both kind of fibers, it has both kinds of fibers. It has 1a type of fibers and it has two fibers of type 2. And Golgi tendon organ, it has fibers of type 1b. So this is very, very important to remember, a very, very high yield point regarding these, and you will study these in detail when you do neurophysiology. But for now, please remember this. So 1a, you will see muscle spindle annulospiral ending. What 2, you will see muscle spindle flower spray ending. That's one combined term, and you will also see it for touch and pressure fibers. 1b, you will see for Golgi tendon organ. Is that much clear so far? Is that much clear so far? So once we have had an understanding of this much, let's go to the next thing, that is type 3 fibers. These are same as A delta and they will be carrying fast pain. So pain and cold receptors and some touch receptors, all of these, they will be present in type 3, right? And in type 4, you will have pain, temperature and other receptors of type C, which are actually unmyelinated. So these are going to carry fast pain. These are going to carry slow pain. All right. So you can see in this classification, there are only sensory. There are only sensory kinds of fibers. There's no motor fiber here. There's no motor fiber here. Extrafusal, intrafusal fibers. There's no motor fibers here. They're only purely a sensory classification, right? So now let's try to frame a few questions from here. Let's try to frame a few questions from here. So like I already asked you from here, so what are the possible, few possible questions here, right? So maybe somebody could ask you that what is the type of fiber present in the muscle spindle, right? What is the type of fiber present in the muscle spindle? And one option would be, let's say, type 1a, one option would be type 1b, one option would be type 2, and one option would be both 1 and 3, right? So what would be your answer? What would be your answer? So if this was a live class, I would have discussed this with you, but otherwise, so for the purpose of this class, the correct answer is option 4, both 1 and 3, because this is there in the annulospiral endings and this is there in the flower spray endings, right? And this is there in the Golgi tendon organ, so this is not going to be on your answer. Okay, so next kind of question could have been that what are the fibers responsible for conduction of fast pain, right? In that case, your answer should have been type 3 fibers, Okay, generally they will give you A delta, but if A delta is not in the options, type 3 fibers will be your answer. All right. And then if they ask you what are the fibers which are responsible for conduction of slow pain, ideally your answer should be type C fibers, or if it is not in the option, type 4 fibers. All right. So let's have a combined look at these two tables. Let's review them together. All right. So I told you there is one classification called as the Erlanger and Gaster classification. The second classification is the Lloyd and Hunt classifications. Okay. So you will see here, you have in the Erlanger and Gaster classification, you have A alpha, you have A beta, you have A gamma, you have A delta, and you have type B fibers, you have type C fibers. Okay. And only C type of fibers, they are unmyelinated. Rest all are going to be myelinated. So fiber type A, all the types of fiber A, type fiber B, they're all myelinated. Only fiber type C is unmyelinated, right? So we've already discussed the correlation between the diameter and the conduction velocity, right? So there are two factors on which conduction velocity will be decided, that is myelination and the second is diameter, right? So you have to be very careful that type C fibers, because they're unmyelinated, they will always have a lower conduction velocity than the other fibers. Okay. So if you talk about the next thing, the comparison with the Lloyd and Hunt classification. So A gamma fibers, they are intrafusal motor muscle fibers, right? So they are going to be crossed. They are going to be crossed because they are motor fibers. So Lloyd and Hunt, they said we will not classify motor fibers. Type B fibers, they are also motor fibers because they are preganglionic autonomic fibers, right? So they were basically not classified by Lloyd and Hunt. So again, we'll put a cross here. Now again, let's have a look at the functions. A alpha fibers, I told you, they are responsible for proprioception because they are present in annulospiral endings. Motor supply to the skeletal muscle is also via the A alpha type of fibers, and this is called as extrafusal. So This is a very important terminology to review. A alpha versus A gamma. Okay. So A alpha, the motor component for both. If you look at that, A alpha, the motor component, that is called as extrafusal, because fusal means muscle spindle. This fusal word is for spindle. So outside the spindle, extrafusal motor supply. And A gamma is intrafusal motor supply, which is, it is motor to the muscle spindle. This is motor to the somatic muscles. Very, very important distinction to make. And the A beta fibers, I already told you, they're responsible for touch and pressure sensations. A gamma fibers, they are going to control the motor supply to the muscle spindle. That is the motor supply to the intrafusal muscle fibers. Now, A delta fibers, they are responsible for the conduction of fast pain. So they are responsible for pain, temperature, pressure, touch, all of these sensations. And when you talk about type C fibers, they have basically the same functions as A delta type of fibers, but again, the only difference is that they are slow. So you will see that the same kind of things, pain, temperature, pressure, they are going to be present here. And I already told you that post-ganglionic sympathetic fibers are also of C type, right? So I guess that brings us to a conclusion to this entire table. So again, once let's go through it and let's quickly revise it. So let's just delete whatever is there on the screen. So if you look at it, A alpha, they are type 1 according to Lloyd and Hunt. They are myelinated. They have a diameter of 13 to 20 microns with a conduction velocity of 70 to 120, and they are responsible for proprioception and motor supply to the skeletal muscle. Proprioception is through annulospiral endings, and the motor supply to the skeletal muscles, that is called as extrafusal. For now, just ignore this table. Right? This last column, let's not talk about. A beta fibers, they are type 2 according to Lloyd and Hunt, myelinated. This is the diameter, this is the conduction velocity. You don't need to remember the exact values. You should know the trend. Alright. They are responsible for touch and pressure sensation. A gamma fibers, they are motor fibers. They're only motor fibers. So they are not classified by Lloyd and Hunt. Right. Now you will say, why is A alpha classified by Lloyd and Hunt? Because they are also sensory, because annulospiral endings of proprioception, they are sensory. So A alpha can be sensory or motor. So Lloyd and Hunt said, since there are sensory fibers, we will also classify them. But A gamma is purely intrafusal motor supply. So it is not classified by Lloyd and Hunt. You can see the myelination, you can see the diameter and conduction velocity. A delta is type 3 according to Lloyd and Hunt, and again myelinated. You can see the diameter, and it is responsible for pain and temperature, right? So fast pain is through A delta fibers or type 3 according to Lloyd and Hunt. Then B type of fibers, they were not classified by Lloyd and Hunt, and you can again see what are they conducting. Type C fibers, they are also called type 4 according to Lloyd and Hunt, unmyelinated, very low conduction velocities, and they carry pain and temperature, so they're responsible for slow pain. Okay, so that's kind of a summary of what we have done throughout the entire video. And now let's come to one last concept, and that is susceptibilities, right? So again, a very, very high yield, very small concept, but very high yield and very difficult to remember. Okay, so we'll try and clear this out. Very high yield, but very, very difficult to remember and very important. Okay, so how I do this is that I try to differentiate between uh right. So I try to differentiate between type A and type C, and B automatically fits in. All right. So how we will differentiate between type A and type C? We will use the difference between A delta and type C fibers, right? So A delta fibers, they are responsible for fast pain. They're responsible for fast pain, right? Fast pain is somatic pain, which is basically coming from your skin and other regions, Type C fibers, they're responsible for slow pain, and slow pain is said to be visceral pain, which is coming from deep within the organs. Okay, visceral pain. So now you tell me, if I apply pressure here, right? So which is the most susceptible one? Will there be, you will feel pain from coming from your skin, or will you, so let's say this is the right side of my body. I am applying deep pressure here. I am applying deep pressure here. Okay. So where is the sensation coming from? It is coming from the skin, right? My, the pressure is being felt on the skin, not on my liver, right? Not on my liver. So which is the most susceptible to pressure? Which is the, although I'm wrong here because this pressure is being sensed by actually A beta fibers, right? Not A delta, but this is just a comparison. Okay, so A beta fibers, they are the most susceptible. The A kind of fibers, they are the most susceptible to pressure. A fibers, they are most susceptible to pressure. That's done. Least susceptible to pressure is type C fibers. Least susceptible to pressure is type C fibers. And intermediate between them is B, right? So for pressure, the order is very simple. Most susceptible A, intermediate B, least susceptible C. Clear? Then you come to local anesthetics. Then you come to local anesthetics, right? So local anesthetics, you see, they are used in surgeries. And in surgeries, you want that the pain coming from the organs should be very less. You are cutting organs. The organs should not feel any kind of pain, because otherwise you will feel very burning, very intense, very sharp pain, right? Not very sharp, but very burning pain. Okay. So the most susceptible kind of fibers here, they are the local anesthetic, to local anesthesia, right? Are the visceral fibers or the visceral pain fibers, that is type C fibers, and the least susceptible here are type A fibers. Least susceptible here are type A fibers. All right, am I clear? Am I clear in building this understanding for you? Hmm? Okay, great. So that is one thing that you have to remember. That's to correlate. And then intermediate is again type B. Okay. So now what is left is hypoxia. Now what is left is hypoxia, right? So whenever hypoxia sets in, the first system that you always think about is the CNS, right? And again, not very direct correlation, but type B fibers are preganglionic autonomic fibers. So most susceptible would be type B, followed by type A, followed by type C, because visceral organs, they will still remain perfused. The periphery will first start to get damaged. So that is how I relate this. Okay. So, but again, this is not a very perfect correlation. The only way to actually perfectly do this is to memorize this table. And how we will do that? So we have first done the memorizing part through a way of trying to understand everything and to try and develop some correlations, to try and develop some connecting lines. But even if we still can't remember, we will have to do some memorization techniques. We will have to try and memorize it. So the most effective way I find of memorizing this is to remember that the position of A fibers. Okay. So first I will write HPA, right? High power anesthesia, high power anesthesia. And then I will write A here, here and here. And then automatically I will try and put B and C, because here you know that C has to come here, here C has to come here. And then two B's here, one B here and one C here. So if you draw it enough number of times, that is one way to memorize this table. Okay, just keep this in mind, that where the A's are going to be placed, because more or less the question is always going to be on most susceptible and least susceptible, right? That's the first way. The second way to remember, if you only want to remember the most susceptible ones, that then it is very easy. Okay, so let's say you want to remember the most susceptible ones. So see here, for most susceptible we will do alphabeticals, right? But there's a very different way of doing this alphabetical. Okay, so what were the three agents? Pressure, P for pressure, H for hypoxia, and A for anesthesia. Okay, so pressure, hypoxia, anesthesia, you can see the first letters P, H, A. I have written this in alphabetical order in opposite, right? So starting from the highest alphabet, then going downward. So P, H, A. And then the order becomes ABC. The order becomes ABC, right? And this is in increasing alphabetical order, A, B, C. So that is how you guys can actually memorize this particular table. And that brings us to the end of this class. And I hope you guys have been comfortable. You guys will be able to learn all of this, and you guys actually found this useful. This table is now complete, this particular table, and you guys can actually go ahead and read this table again. The more number of times you read this, the more number of times it will be helpful for you. Do read it at least twice or thrice, because this concept, trust me, it's very very important and people keep forgetting this. So it's very important to understand it in a way that it is engraved in your head, right? In this table, we have which classification, right? Erlanger and Gaster, Lloyd and Hunt, the myelination status, the diameter, the conduction velocity, the various functions, right? So one more thing that you can add here is that this is extrafusal. This is extrafusal muscle, right? And the agent to which it is more susceptible, pressure, hypoxia, and local anesthetics, written in the order that we had written, PHA. Okay, inverse alphabetical order. So just think of this table whenever any question comes related to nerve fibers, and you should be able to easily solve it. Okay, that brings us to the end of this class. And one more thing, one more very important thing, guys. So before I end the class, I have to tell you also about one thing, that is about my Unacademy page, right? The link is in the description. You will find it in the description. My Unacademy page is at the rate Chetanya Mittal 35. Chetanya Mittal. Sorry for the complicated name. You can just click on the link in the description. 354586. So if you just write unacademy.com and then you do this, then you will be able to find my user profile, and you guys can check it out. If you guys are liking my lecture, do dedicate a hat. And tomorrow I'm planning to have a session that is going to be, I'm planning to have one in the night, right? At let's say let's have a midnight session, and let's try to do some MCQs related to physiology so that you can apply all these concepts that you are learning. All right, so take care guys, have a good time, thank you so much. And before I end the class, I also have to tell you a little bit about the video. So if you guys like the video, do hit the like button for this video, and do drop a comment if you found the video to be useful for you. And you can subscribe to our channel, Let's Crack NEET PG. We are making free content all the time for you. And today is our YouTube festival also. So please do watch out the other videos I made today. I've tried to make more tidbits for you so that you guys can learn. We made a video on J receptors, and my referral code is Chetanya10, or you can also use my referral code SPCM, and it will give you a 10% discount. And if you've not downloaded the Unacademy Learning app, you can also use this particular referral code as an invite code to unlock all the free content that is there on Unacademy. Do hit the bell icon for notifications. There's a Telegram channel link in the description. Do join it. And you can also join my Telegram channel, that is at the rate Unacademy NEET PG Chetanya, right? And this is where I will be uploading the PDFs of all my sessions so that you guys can access all this free content, right? So take care and have fun.